Hello friends! There are several things happening right now in Canada that are quietly costing seniors and retirees real money, not because anyone did anything dishonest, not because anyone broke an obvious rule, but because systems have changed, laws have been updated, and automated processes are now making decisions before you even pick up the phone or open your front door. Fines are arriving in the mail, insurance policies are being canceled or repriced, bank transactions are being frozen, and the common thread running through every single one of these situations is the same. None of them come with a warning letter. None of them include a polite explanation. By the time most people find out something has happened, the decision has already been made and the clock is already ticking on what you can do about it. If you are watching this channel for the first time, please subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell. I am not saying that for the view count. I am saying it because these rules change quietly, and the cost of finding out the hard way is not $10 or $20. It is hundreds, sometimes thousands. And it is always avoidable if you know ahead of time. So let us get into it. The first thing you need to know about is what is happening with home insurance in Canada right now, and it involves something most homeowners have never thought about. Insurance companies in this country, including Intact Financial, Aviva Canada, and TD Insurance, are now using aerial imagery and drone technology to inspect the exterior of your home without ever knocking on your door, without scheduling an appointment, and without telling you afterward what they found. They are contracting companies that specialize in high-resolution aerial photography, and these images are being used to assess the condition of your roof, your driveway, your deck, your gutters, and the overall state of your property. The assessment happens, a report is generated, and if the insurer decides something looks like a risk, they can change your coverage, increase your premium, or send you a letter giving you a short window of time to make repairs before your policy is canceled. Here is the part that makes this particularly difficult to deal with. Under most provincial insurance regulations in Canada, your insurer is not legally required to share the actual aerial report with you. They are required to notify you of a material change to your policy or of a cancellation, but the specific findings that triggered that decision, the images themselves, the third-party assessment, those do not have to be handed over just because you ask. In Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta, provincial insurance acts require a minimum notice period for non-renewal, typically 45 days, but the underlying reason only has to be communicated in general terms. So you may receive a letter saying your roof shows signs of deterioration and your policy will not be renewed without ever being shown the image they are basing that on. Think about what that looks like in practice. A retired homeowner in Hamilton, Ontario, receives a letter in early summer. It says their home insurance will not be renewed in 45 days because an exterior inspection identified roofing concerns. They have owned the house for 22 years. The roof was replaced 9 years ago. They had no idea any inspection had taken place. They call the insurer. The representative confirms that a third-party aerial survey was conducted but tells them the report is proprietary. They have 45 days to either prove the roof is in acceptable condition with a licensed contractor's report or find new coverage. Finding new insurance with an active non-renewal notice on your file is significantly harder and almost always more expensive. This situation disproportionately affects seniors and retirees for a specific reason. If you have lived in your home for a long time, your insurance premium has likely stayed relatively stable. You have a history with your provider. You are not shopping around every year. That means you are less likely to be actively monitoring your policy for changes, less likely to have recent documentation of your home's condition, and less likely to know that this kind of remote inspection is even legal. Younger homeowners who bought recently, who went through competitive mortgage processes, who dealt with home inspectors and updated documentation, are far more likely to have current records on file. Long-term homeowners often do not. Here is what you can do. First, contact your home insurance provider and ask directly whether they use third-party aerial or satellite imagery services to assess your property. Ask this in writing, by email if possible, so you have a record. Second, get a licensed roofing contractor to do a visual inspection of your roof and provide you with a written condition report. This costs between $100 and $300 in most provinces and gives you documentation to challenge any insurer's assessment. Third, read your policy renewal package carefully this year. If you see any change in your premium of more than 10 to 15%, call and ask specifically whether an exterior inspection was a factor. You have the right to know the general reason your rate changed, even if you do not have the right to the full report. The second thing happening right now involves your bank, and it is more disruptive than most people realize. Canada has a federal financial intelligence unit called FinTrack, the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada. FinTrack requires Canadian financial institutions, including RBC, TD, Scotiabank, BMO, and CIBC, to monitor transactions and report anything that appears suspicious. That has been the case for years. What has changed is how aggressively the system is being applied and how provincial elder financial abuse legislation is now layering on top of it. Ontario's Substitute Decisions Act and similar legislation in British Columbia and Alberta have given banks clearer authority and in some cases a legal obligation to flag or delay transactions when they believe a senior client may be the victim of financial exploitation. This sounds protective, and in genuine abuse cases it is. But the way it plays out in practice is that the bank's algorithm, not a human being, is often making the initial determination. A large withdrawal, a wire transfer to an account the system has not seen before, a change in spending pattern, a transaction that does not fit the profile the system has built over months of your account history. Any of these can trigger a hold or a delay without you being told in advance that it is going to happen. Picture a retired woman in Burnaby, British Columbia. She is selling a piece of furniture to someone she met through an online listing. She agrees to receive an e-transfer. The amount is larger than her usual transactions. The bank's system flags it. The funds do not appear in her account when expected. She calls the branch. She is told there is a review process underway. She is not told how long it will take. She does not have access to those funds while the review is happening. The person who sent her the money sees it leave their account. She does not see it arrive. It takes 4 business days to resolve. During that window, she has bills scheduled to come out and not enough in her main account to cover them. This hits retirees particularly hard because your income pattern is predictable and relatively fixed. You receive CPP, OAS, maybe a pension deposit, on the same dates every month. When you do something outside that pattern, the algorithm notices. The very stability that makes retirees good banking customers is the same thing that makes any deviation look unusual to a transaction monitoring system. And unlike a younger person who might have irregular income from freelance work or multiple sources, your account history has trained the system to expect consistency. A single large or unusual transaction stands out more sharply. Here is what you can do. First, if you know you are about to make a large or unusual transaction, call your branch ahead of time and tell them. This is not guaranteed to prevent a hold, but it creates a human record in your file that can speed up any review. Second, ask your bank to give you a written explanation anytime a transaction is delayed or funds are held. Under federal consumer protection rules and the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada's guidelines, you are entitled to an explanation. Third, if your bank holds your funds and you believe it was in error, file a complaint with your bank's internal ombudsman first, and then with the Ombudsman for Banking Services and Investments if you are not satisfied. This process has real teeth. Banks do resolve these complaints. The third thing I want to walk you through is a driving law change that has now been expanded in 3 major provinces and is catching experienced drivers completely off guard. You have probably heard of the Move Over law. The original version required drivers to move over one lane or slow down significantly when passing emergency vehicles stopped on the roadside with lights flashing. That law has existed in most provinces for years. What has changed is the definition of what qualifies. In Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta, the Move Over law has been expanded to include any vehicle stopped on the side of the road with its hazard lights activated. Not just police cars, not just ambulances, any vehicle, a tow truck, a delivery van, a personal vehicle with a flat tire. If it is on the shoulder with hazard lights on, you are legally required to move over one lane if it is safe to do so, or to reduce your speed significantly if you cannot change lanes. In Ontario, the fine for failing to do this can reach $2,000. There is also the possibility of a license suspension and demerit points. British Columbia and Alberta carry similar financial penalties, and the enforcement is not always happening through a police officer watching. Traffic cameras in some corridors are being used to identify lane patterns near stopped vehicles. Here is why this is catching people who have been driving for decades. The original version of the law was about emergency vehicles, and experienced drivers learned that rule and internalized it. The expansion happened through amendments that did not receive the same level of public attention. If you learned to drive 40 years ago, if your habits were built around a version of the rule that covered only flashing emergency lights, your muscle memory does not include a minivan with hazard lights on the 401. You see it, you slow down slightly, you do not move over. And under the current law in Ontario, that can be a $2,000 mistake. Think of a retired schoolteacher from Mississauga driving on the 400 toward Barrie to visit family. She passes a car on the shoulder with its hazards on. She is in the right lane. There is traffic in the left lane. She reduces her speed but does not move over. An officer who was 2 cars back clocks the infraction. The fine she receives is not a warning. Under Ontario's Highway Traffic Act as amended, it is a ticket that starts at a minimum of $400 and can reach $2,000 plus potential license suspension depending on the discretion of the court. Seniors and retirees drive more often during off-peak hours, which means they encounter more situations on quieter roads and highways where enforcement is more visible. You are also less likely to have had a recent driver's education refresher where rule changes like this would be covered. The people who found out about this expansion were mostly people who got a ticket. Here is what you can do. First, look up your province's current move-over law right now. Search the name of your province plus move-over law and read the current version. Confirm what vehicles are now included and what the speed reduction requirement is in your jurisdiction. Second, when you see any vehicle on the shoulder with lights on, move over a full lane if you safely can. Do not wait to judge what kind of vehicle it is. Make it a reflex for any hazard lights. Third, if you have a spouse or family member who drives and is older, share this with them specifically. This is one of those changes that is almost never discussed at a family dinner, but costs people real money. The fourth and final thing is about automated traffic cameras, and this one is expanding faster than most drivers realize. Ontario, British Columbia, and Quebec are all rolling out additional automated speed enforcement cameras in school zones and construction zones starting in mid-2026. These are not new cameras in places you already know about. These are additional locations being added to existing networks, and in the case of construction zones, the camera locations change as the work progresses. Here is what makes construction zones particularly dangerous from a fine perspective. When a construction zone is active, a reduced speed limit applies, and in most provinces that reduced limit is posted on temporary signage that appears along the construction corridor. The speed cameras in those zones are set to the temporary limit, not the regular posted limit for that road. If you are on a road you have driven for 20 years at 100 kilometers per hour, and a construction zone reduces that to 60, and you enter the zone doing 80 because you saw the signs but your speed was still adjusting, the camera captures you at 80 in a 60 zone. The fine arrives in the mail. There is no officer stop, there is no conversation, there is no warning, there is a photo, a registered owner's name, and a dollar amount. In Ontario, automated speed enforcement fines in construction zones can reach several $100s depending on how far over the limit the camera clocks you. In Quebec, photo radar fines go directly to the registered owner. British Columbia's intersection safety camera program similarly mails violations with no points attached but full fines applicable, and none of these require a stop. You never know it happened until the envelope arrives. A retired contractor from Ottawa who drives regularly through areas with active roadwork near his former job sites gets caught doing 73 in a 60 zone. He is not speeding recklessly, he is a careful driver. He entered the zone and was still braking when the camera captured him. The fine in the mail is $260. He cannot dispute the speed. The image is clear. He pays it. Retirees are affected by this in a specific way. You often drive familiar routes. You know the roads. That familiarity can actually work against you in a construction zone because your brain is processing the road based on years of established habit. The construction signage interrupts that. But if you are focused on the road conditions, the temporary signs can register later than they should. Younger commuters on unfamiliar routes are often more alert to signage because everything is new to them. Long-term route familiarity is a real factor in how quickly experienced drivers adapt to temporary changes. Here's what you can do. First, when you enter a construction zone on any road you drive regularly, treat the speed as unknown until you see the posted temporary limit. Do not assume it matches the limit you know for that road. Second, when you see orange construction signage, actively look for the speed sign rather than treating it as background. Make that a conscious habit, not a passive one. Third, check whether your municipality or province has a website or map showing current automated speed enforcement camera locations. Ontario's program publishes general zone information. It is not always specific to the exact camera position, but it will tell you which corridors have active enforcement. So here is the complete summary. Home insurance aerial inspections are happening without notice. Canadian insurers including Intact, Aviva, and TD Insurance are using third-party aerial imagery to assess your property. They are not required to share the report with you. You can protect yourself by requesting documentation proactively, getting a contractor's written inspection, and reading your renewal carefully for unexplained premium increases. Bank transaction holds are being triggered by automated systems under FinTrack rules and provincial elder financial protection legislation. Unusual transactions from otherwise predictable accounts are being flagged and delayed, sometimes for several days, without advance notice. You can protect yourself by calling your branch before large transactions, requesting written explanations for any hold, and knowing how to file a complaint with the Ombudsman for banking services and investments. The Move Over law has been expanded in Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta to include any vehicle with hazard lights on, not just emergency vehicles. Fines in Ontario reach $2,000. You can protect yourself by looking up the current law in your province, making lane changes a reflex for any roadside hazard lights, and sharing this with anyone in your life who drives regularly. Automated speed and red light cameras are expanding in school zones and construction zones across Ontario, British Columbia, and Quebec, starting mid-2026. Fines arrive by mail with no officer stop. Construction zones with temporary reduced limits are the highest risk. You can protect yourself by treating every construction zone as having an unknown speed limit until you see the posted sign and checking provincial enforcement zone maps. None of these situations involve doing anything obviously wrong. All of them are catching people who simply did not know the rules had changed. Now you do. Subscribe. Share this with someone who owns a home or drives a car, and I'll see you in the next one.